Let's make our Parmesan croutons for the wrap. Now we're gonna make these small enough, very bite-sized, so when we wrap it with the chicken and the lettuce and the dressing, each bite will have a little bit of crunch in there, and that comes from these croutons. So I'm using a day-old baguette here. Perfect for crouton making. Right into a sheet pan here. Shake it, even it out. Stream some olive oil in there. You can do the thumb deal, because we are keeping it light. I don't wanna put too much on here. Some grated Parmesan cheese, making it rain, like a Tuscan sun shower. Salt and pepper, to taste, just a little bit. All right, these go in the oven at 375 for about 15 minutes till they're golden brown. So these are gonna go great in our chicken Caesar wrap, which I have my chicken right here. It has been marinating all night in olive oil, lemon juice, lemon zest, and just garlic, keeping it healthy and lean. We got my grill pan nice and hot. Want to develop some color on that, but make sure it cooks all the way through. It's already smelling great in here. We didn't use any salt or pepper in our marinade, so now we can season the exterior directly. And these will go about 12 minutes aside, so there's no more pink in the center. Or at about 165, 170 on your instant read thermometer. Let's make the sour cream Caesar dressing. All right, so let's start with a cup of low-fat sour cream. Next, a tablespoon of Dijon mustard for that extra special tang. Another must ingredient to have in any Caesar is Parmesan. So we'll do about 2 tablespoons of this, 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire. Right, gives that nice meaty quality to your Caesar. I love me some Worcestershire. Let's do 1 whole garlic clove, zested right in there. The juice from a half a lemon. All right, did you hear that? It's starting to change noise. That means it's time to do fancy turns. There we go. Perfect, see? One last ingredient to my sour cream Caesar is an anchovy. Don't be scared. When I put this anchovy in there, you're not gonna really taste fishiness. You're not gonna taste the anchovy. But if I didn't put it in there, you'll definitely taste that something is missing in the Caesar. So we're just gonna mash it with the fork, put it right in there, and get all this incorporated. Now that's perfect. That's what I'm talking about, see? Still dripping juice, we weren't prodding it. Now we can flip it. Oh yeah. All right, our grilled chicken has a chance to rest. Slice it nice and thin. Look at that, perfectly cooked, juicy. Very good. Oh man, smoky, lemony, little garlicky. Let's use romaine, it's the obvious choice for any good Caesar. We cut ours a little smaller here, bite-sized pieces. Some quartered cherry tomatoes. Don't forget our croutons. And of course, our homemade sour cream Caesar. Nice and light, but very, very flavorful. Now, Caesar salad is like the one wrap I like to combine all the ingredients first and then put it in the wrap just to make sure every crouton, every piece of chicken, every tomato, every little shred of lettuce has a bit of love from that sour cream Caesar on it. I like the element of fresh, sun-dried tomato tortillas combined with the Caesar, plus the beautiful color. It's like a full moon. And I'm changing into a werewolf. There we go. Now we can take our tossed salad, put it right in the middle, make sure we get some croutons, some tomatoes, evenly spread across. Don't overstuff this, and if this is your first time doing a wrap, start small, all right? Get the mechanics of wrapping a sandwich. Sides go in first. Then we do the double thumb turnover toppage method. Now this is the tricky part. You wanna keep it tight, and then with your little pinky fingers, kind of get those in there, you see? Tightly roll, and leave right there. That's a wrap. There's nothing heavy in it. The chicken's very tender.
I'm starting with the chicken for the chicken tikka masala, and I'm just piercing these chicken thighs. Chicken tikka masala means nothing more than chicken. Tikka means little pieces. Masala is just the spice blend that we're gonna be using. Pretty simple, right? And I'm using chicken thighs because they're so much more forgiving than breasts. You know, I'm gonna grill these and then I'm gonna cook them in a curry sauce. so I don't want them to dry out. I'm gonna make a very simple yogurt marinade. So I'm using just some plain whole milk yogurt. I'm using whole milk because I think it holds on just a little bit better than the non-fat, but if you're watching what you eat, use the non-fat, it's just fine. So about a cup's worth. And then I'm using this ginger garlic paste. This is one of the things I always have in the fridge. My mum always has it in the fridge. It's just equal parts of ginger and garlic blended together with some canola oil, and it just makes me hungry when I smell it. The ginger is sort of refreshing, a little bit spicy. The garlic has that great bite. If you don't have it, no worries. Just use 3 cloves of garlic, maybe a tablespoon of ginger grated finely, and you'll be golden. All right, some salt, some pepper, and that's your marinade. It's super easy, isn't it? So now that the chicken is nicely pierced, that marinade's gonna go all the way through, and the yogurt actually tenderizes the chicken a little bit. It's doing a couple things at once. I'm gonna give this a toss, and I'm gonna let it just sit on the back counter there at room temperature while I finish my sauce. You could also make this, cover it with plastic, and let it marinate overnight in the fridge. It's great. The sauce. So I'm just gonna preheat this pan, and I'm gonna use a little bit of olive oil for that great flavor, which, you know, we don't actually use a lot of olive oil in Indian food. I just think it's so delicious though. And I'm not cooking this at a very high heat, so it's not gonna burn. Then for even more flavor and a little richness, some butter, right there, and I'm just gonna let that melt. Okay. So for my flavor base, I'm gonna do a very traditional Indian flavor base, which is serranos, ginger, and garlics. All right, so my butter's nicely melted, adding the serranos. As soon as they hit the oil, I can smell them. I'm gonna put a good couple teaspoons of this ginger garlic paste in here. So a good old squeeze of tomato paste. I'm just gonna cook it until it deepens in color and kind of caramelizes. So now it's time to add some spices, and I'm just using 2 to keep it really easy. I'm using 2 teaspoons of paprika, mostly for color, but it has a nice earthiness to it that I love. Then I'm gonna add half a teaspoon of garam masala. It's a little bit of a cheat. It has a ton of different spices in here. Cinnamon and cloves, cumin and coriander in there too. Great way to sneak some Indian flavor into whatever you're making. This is the bulk of your sauce, these gorgeous, gorgeous tomatoes. I'm using the Roma kind. You can also use a can of tomatoes if you don't have good fresh ones. They look great. So that's the masala part of the chicken tikka masala. But what about the chicken, you ask? Here it is. So it's been marinating in yogurt, ginger, and garlic, a little salt and pepper, and I'm gonna treat it to a good grilling. Okay, so I'm just gonna check on them periodically, see if it's good and charred on the one side, and then flip it over. I'm gonna add just a touch of water here. The tomatoes are really gonna break down. I'm gonna turn this up a little because I wanna bring it to a boil and then simmer for about 20 minutes. Time to put the chicken in. This comes together so quickly. I love, love, love this dish. So the chicken was marinated in yogurt, ginger, and garlic, a little salt and pepper, and then I charred it on this grill pan to give it a little extra flavor and great texture. As my final little flavoring touch, I'm gonna use some dried fenugreek leaves. In Hindi, we call it methi. We use these a lot in Indian cooking. Has a great, really, really pungent aroma, almost maple-like. So if you can't find these, then try a little maple syrup. That's great. So I'm just gonna give this a stir and, you know, use your judgment. This actually could cook uncovered, but if it's too thick, then put a lid on it. I'm just gonna let this cook 5-10 minutes so the sauce goes into the chicken goes into the sauce. I can't wait for a little decadence. You could also do some half and half, but this gives it that nice creamy quality and actually kind of soothes some of that heat, some of the spiciness. So, look at that color, you guys. It looks so good.
I'm making a main course that means business. It's my buttermilk fried chicken, which has everything you could ever want in a comfort food. It's juicy on the inside and has a thick, crunchy shell on the outside. I brine the chicken, batter it, deep fry it, and then demolish. To start, I've got my chicken broken down into 10 pieces in my casserole dish where I'm gonna brine it. And I'm gonna cover it with buttermilk, which is the best brining liquid because it makes the meat so moist and then it also adds that tang. I'm gonna add about 3 cups. Some cayenne pepper, a ½ teaspoon will add the perfect little kick, but it won't be overpowering. And then 3 tablespoons of kosher salt, which seems like a lot of salt, but the brine needs it in order for it to do its job. Because what the brine is doing is it's basically pulling out the moisture from the chicken, and then when the moisture goes back into the chicken, it's flavored with all that salt and this other goodness in the brine. And then it's just gonna get so juicy. I'll add 1 tablespoon of sugar, loads of black pepper, and then a few sprigs of fresh thyme. And this is gonna mirror the dried thyme that's in the za'atar that'll go on top at the end. And lastly, a couple of cloves of garlic. And I'm just gonna smash them so that they can infuse the mixture. I don't need to chop them up totally. Plop these in, and then I'm gonna use my tongs to zhuzh everything around. And this is a great straightforward brine. It'd be really good with pork chops or turkey, other lean meats. The chicken is fully coated. I'll grab some plastic wrap. I'll let this brine in the refrigerator for a few hours, and it is gonna make the meat so tender and juicy. It's worth it. I already have the chicken brining in some buttermilk, garlic, thyme, and cayenne, and it's gonna make the meat so tender and juicy. And now I just need to mix up my coating. So I'm gonna grab 2½ cups of all-purpose flour, ½ cup of cornstarch, which is gonna make it extra crunchy, and 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, and then I'll spice things up with 1 tablespoon of paprika, or 3 teaspoons if you wanna get mathematical, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, so flavorful. I feel like garlic powder is underrated. 1 teaspoon of dried mustard powder, chicken and mustard, match made in poultry heaven. And then ½ teaspoon of cayenne for a little more heat. I'll crack in some black pepper. Smelling good already. And I'll whisk it together. My coating is combined. Let me grab the chicken, see if it's up from its nap yet. This is gonna be so juicy. I'm gonna do something that has revolutionized my life as a fried chicken lover. I'm gonna actually add some of the brine into the coating, and that allows the coating to clump up so you can get more of it in each bite, and it adds some of this delicious flavor from the brine. I'm gonna drizzle in a ¼ cup of the brine, and then get in here with my hands to get it clumpy and good. Oh yeah, baby. So I have a pan ready to go here with a wire rack, and I'm gonna start with the legs, the best part. I'll let any of the excess coating drip off, and then I'll coat it all over. See, some of these clumps are just sticking on. I love the texture that the brine forms with the coating. This is what you need to live in the north, is a big, heavy coat. The chicken is ready. I'll get this on my pan, dredge the rest of my chicken, and then head outside for an awesome fry out. How's the chickens?
Done.
Oh, that looks beautiful.
perfect.
Okay, you can put it on this wire rack now.
Okay.
The wire rack is gonna allow any excess oil to drip off. It's gonna keep it crispy on the bottom too.
And they said I couldn't fry chicken.
I didn't say that. I'm gonna sprinkle it with some za'atar as it comes off. Za'atar is a spice blend with dried thyme, sumac, which is vinegary, and some toasted sesame seeds. This is just gonna bring it over the top. Well, this is fun.
I did that.
All right, to start things off, what's chicken saltimbocca? We're talking about chicken breast, we're talking about prosciutto, we're talking about sage, and a little butter and a little white wine, and it's fantastic. But I want to push mine a little bit further. My kids want it to go a little bit bigger, and I think that sometimes even the simplicity of the dish can kind of make people feel like it's not that special. This way, I think is special. Now, the first thing we're gonna start off with is a little bit of sage. I'm gonna take some olive oil, preheat a pan, put a little crisp on this sage, because it's gonna be going in with the chicken in just a bit. Actually, we'll throw the stems in there too. They got a ton of flavor. Put a little crisp on them. But what the real key is they're infusing this oil. And we're gonna cook the chicken breast in this oil in just a second. But I don't want them to go too far to where they become, where they lose their flavor. Okay, so chicken breast. Pretty common because it's quick and it's easy and it goes fast, and this will add a ton of flavor to it. Now, everybody's got a theory on it when it comes to chicken breast, whether or not they're gonna pound it out or they're gonna make a fillet out of it. I just kind of look at the size that I have first to kind of make my determination. So we have this big lobe right up front. Now, we start pounding on this thing right now, it's just gonna be too much. So what I would recommend when the chicken breasts are this big is that you take your knife and cut it right down the center here, like so. Okay, you got that? See, I kept my hand on top of it. Nice sharp knife. And just about even side, just like that. Okay? And this will give us a chance to give about two per pan. All right? What I don't want to do is if I get into pounding it out too much, I get into really tearing the chicken. And then you start to really lose the texture of the breast. Yeah, it's a meat, but it just becomes too much. It's like ground meat, okay? These could be cut in half if you don't want to do it this big. But I'm trying to do this nice big presentation because this is going to look nicer for dinner. Wash my hands real quick. Plastic wrap in the wind, my nemesis. This will just keep all those chicken parts from flying around. Super simple. From the inside, just a little inside out. And that's as far as we want to take it. What am I really doing here, more than tenderizing, is I'm making all the size. Isn't it annoying, someone trying to talk to you and you're hammering at the same time? I'm trying to make it all the same size so it'll cook evenly. See, in, out. Hang on a second. I need to get this pan ready. I'll give that a little bit of that sage oil. Look how beautiful that is, that color. Little canola. Light fry. If you didn't want to fry, then you could go ahead and do this in the oven. But kind of giving this a little quick pan fry builds a really nice texture on the chicken. Okay. Now, there's two different styles here. Do we want to season the chicken right now, or do we want to season the flour to season the chicken? Since I have such little chicken that I'm working with right now, I'm just going to go ahead and season it now. Up high with that salt so it disperses evenly. Not too much salt because we're using that prosciutto and it's gonna have a ton of salt, and not a ton, but it's got a good saltiness to it. And so does the provolone cheese. So traditional saltimbocca would be just what we're doing here. Hit it with the sage, hit it with the prosciutto and call it a day. But we're gonna take ours a little bit further and put some provolone on it. Then it becomes a little bit more, yeah, it's Americanized, but it's the kids like it a little bit more. You put cheese on anything, the kids like it. Okay. See what I'm doing right now is I'm looking for how fast that oil moves in that pan. Starts to move around in that pan like it's water, we're good to go. Okay, take the chicken. We'll dredge it in a little bit of flour, just a touch of flour. You want to make a big old batter with this, you could, but it wouldn't really be saltimbocca at that point. But this is just so it'll give it a nice little caramelization, and it'll help some of the sauce adhere to the chicken. But this will brown off real nice. Okay, we're gonna give it a little test. We're ready to drop. I could load this up. I could fit everybody in a pan, of course, but why would I want to do that? Because all we're gonna end up doing is steaming out. So we'll get one down, two down. Oven's preheated right now at 350. We'll be going in there in just a second. All right, let these brown on both sides. Nice and golden brown on the one side. Don't worry about cooking this all the way through in the pan because we're gonna take this into the oven. So all I wanna do is just get a nice sear on both sides that I've done, and I'm rocking, okay? Now we're gonna grab the sage. A little sage sprinkled in. A little sage goes a long way, folks, and it's gonna perfume out. Now, prosciutto. My recommendation, when the recipe calls for like a ½ pound of prosciutto, you should get exactly a pound. Because between me picking at it, my kids picking at it, my wife picking at it, my dad picking at it, everybody getting a piece of this, I'm gonna throw the prosciutto right in on top. Make sure it's nice and thin. I always, when you go to the deli counter and they're slicing it for you, I always ask them to let me try a slice. And I'm really serious about this. I just had we were up here cooking at the ranch, and we brought a bunch of our managers up here, and we were having this big fiesta, and we were making this dish, actually, and someone had cut the prosciutto with a camping axe. I mean, it was like that thick. We had to go and break it down in the food processor to be able to use it. So just enough prosciutto. Everybody gets a nice little coating. I've got some salty, beautiful provolone here. Cover that up lightly. Again, I don't want to, let's remember, in Italian style, we're not going for big monster amounts where it's this big heaping, gooey cheese running off it. Just enough to coat it. Okay. A lot of flavor in this pan that we're going to bring out here in just a second. So coat that with a little provolone. If you're wondering again what's going on, no, this isn't chicken parmesan. This is how my kids like saltimbocca. All right, so look what we got. We got the chicken, super simple. We took the breast, we sliced them in half, we gave them a little pound, a little flour, a little salt, a little pepper into the sage oil. That, little prosciutto on top of that, some of the sage and some of the provolone. We drop it in the oven, 350 degrees, just enough to melt the cheese. We're almost done. All right, I think we're done. That's what I'm talking about. Gorgeous. That nice hard provolone. Sage, prosciutto. Let's get this. I'm gonna need this pan because there's a lot of flavor in the bottom of that pan that I want. And look at that chicken. Oh, man. This is why the kids love it. And it can go with anything. I'm not kidding you. You got so much richness, so much flavor going on that when you want to go ahead and just serve this with vegetables, asparagus, whatever, everybody's just dying for it. I mean, you got the saltiness, you got the creaminess, you got the roasted chicken or the seared off chicken. Let's get into making the sauce real quick. I'm gonna use both of these actually because I want all the sauce. I had to do 2 pans. I'm just gonna deglaze it first. Super hot, all the flavor, bottom of the pan, little Sauvignon Blanc, okay? We'll let that cook off a bit. I got some really cold butter here that I'm gonna mix into it. I'm using the cold butter because that's gonna keep it from breaking. Hi, yeah, those are hot. Little Italian parsley here that I washed. Always gotta dress this up. We're taking all this time to do it, right? We've been able to knock this meal out. Literally, this meal can be knocked out in 10 minutes. Now we'll hit a little chicken stock into it. There we go. Just drop in a little bit of butter. Look at all the flavor we're bringing off the bottom of the pan. Like I said, that cold butter keeps it from breaking. And just when this butter finishes melting, and you get a little bit of that leftover sage, you get some of the drippings from the prosciutto, that salty provolone. You're gonna love this dish. And what I'm trying to do here, the whole idea is to show you these things you can take and do on your own. And sometimes, listen, have I made it with chicken thigh? Absolutely, I have. Got to cook it a little bit longer, but it's all possible, folks. There we go. Oh, yes, you got to taste it before you do it. The white wine, the chicken stock, just the creaminess of the butter. I'm just gonna pour this right over the top, okay? Yes, it shouldn't be laying in sauce, but someone's gonna spoon that out. Take that, drop that right there. Italian parsley. And because it's just you and me hanging out, and there's a fork here somewhere. Look at this. So the great thing is we just cooked it in the pan a little bit, and then we finished it in the oven. So that chicken breast is gonna be super tender. A little bit of that salty provolone, a little white wine chicken stock and some butter. How do you think this bite's gonna be? That's how that bite's gonna be. So happy that I didn't pound that breast down too much. Giving it that butterfly, let it open up, and then just kind of even out the meat, so cooked even. It's not overcooked, it's not dry. A lot of times that happens with chicken breast. And it's a beautiful presentation. We took what is sometimes, a little bit ordinary, but awesome, saltimbocca, and we just fieried it a little bit, huh? I think your family's gonna dig it. Enjoy it, you guys. Go get that recipe. See you next week. Adios. We're
going to take our chicken tenders and let it marinate or tenderize with some buttermilk. And that's one of the things that buttermilk does. It tenderizes meats. It obviously gives it a little bit of that sort of tangy flavor as well. It's also going to promote a nice juicy chicken. So we're just gonna let this marinate for about 30 minutes or so. Now we're gonna move on to our waffle mixture. I have a classic buttermilk waffle recipe that I use. 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and then a little bit of salt, 3 tablespoons of sugar, all right, those are our dry ingredients. Then we need 3 eggs, a little bit of melted unsalted butter, and 1½ cups of buttermilk. I find that buttermilk, first of all, you taste a little bit of that sort of tang running through the buttermilk, but also it makes a very, very tender waffle. Okay. So we have all our ingredients, and then I'm just going to fold in the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients, and then we'll have our waffle batter. We're gonna let the waffle batter sit for 30 minutes or so as well. We can start frying our chicken and making our waffles. So we have some chicken tenders in here that we were marinating in some buttermilk, and I like to dip my chicken twice into the seasoned flour. So we're going to make basically 2 dredges of the flour mixture. Obviously, we're gonna start with all-purpose flour, and then we're gonna season it. A little bit of cayenne, whoops. A little bit of garlic powder and some onion powder and salt and pepper. All right, so then we're going to take some buttermilk. We need a wet dredge and a dry dredge. Man, we got a lot of buttermilk today. And then some hot sauce for some flavor. And if you notice, I season every layer, no matter what it is. Salt and pepper. And we're gonna start by putting the chicken in the flour, then back into the buttermilk, and then back into the flour. I mean, you can put all kinds of different seasonings in here if you want. To me, the most important thing is that it actually has, you know, seasoning and it's flavored. Because otherwise, you're gonna get some bland chicken. All right, here we go. You know, this is just the white meat. There's no skin on it. There's no bones in it. And they're not that thick. So this is gonna cook pretty quickly. When these get golden, they're done. So while those are cooking, let's get our waffles going. I wanna make sure that our waffle iron is on high. I'm gonna paint these with a little bit of butter. And I don't like to make perfect waffles in terms of shape. I like them to be misshapen just because then they look like they're homemade. All right, so we're gonna let those cook. All right, we got our fried chicken ready to go. Now all we need is some waffles. And then we can take some of our chicken. I mean, this is a pretty simple presentation. And then a little bit of honey. And a little bit of hot sauce. A little salt and pepper. All right, let's give it a try. So good. You can taste the tanginess of the buttermilk. So you have the crispiness on the outside, the tender, light and fluffy waffle on the inside. I think the buttermilk has a lot to do with that. And then you have the crispy fried chicken with lots of flavor.
Jeezy, I want you to make what is the marinade and will also become part of the dredge at the end, okay? So that's buttermilk, some hot sauce, and you know my favorite ingredient, hot Hungarian paprika. Whisk it all together.
Yes, ma'am.
I've got my chicken breast here. Now, first secret here is there's so many nooks and crannies and craggles in that chicken breast, and I would argue it's the biggest chicken breast I've ever seen at a fast food location.
It's big.
So the way we create that
It's a real breast or the whole breast?
It's a whole breast, Jeezy. It's crazy. You take some kitchen shears, you take your chicken breast, and just kind of give it some personality.
Now, I've never heard of that technique.
Cut some cuts in there, because we want some of that breading and the batter to get in there and create some nice craggles, I like to call them.
Yeah, for sure.
So just create moments that can happen that are gonna give you some craggles. Now, don't go too far, and you don't have to go all the way through. So look, you see what I've done here? Just about 6 or 7 cuts, you know, maybe 8 around it. Create those little nooks and crannies.
Scientific.
Right into our batter or our marinade. It's gonna become a batter in a minute. Now, you refrigerate this overnight or leave it on your countertop for 2 hours, okay? If you do refrigerate this, make sure before you go to fry it that you put it on the countertop for 2 hours so it gets room temp.
Okay.
All right?
And I bet the cutting of it too helps it cook more evenly because that one end is so
does.
plump, and then you have the tapered end, so it kind of
Exactly. It
matches up.
allows some of that oil to get in there and bring it to the right temperature. That's right, Jeff. You know what's up.
I know. It's
All right.
science.
So, these are the marinated chicken breasts. Taking them out of the marinade, that's just, remember, buttermilk, hot sauce, and the hot Hungarian paprika. And a lot of people have been to the fast food place. This looks really familiar because when you bite into their fried chicken, there's that pink layer of seasoned
so
love.
that's what it is.
All right, so look what's happening here. This is going into a bowl of flour.
Oh.
And then added to that, we're gonna do some baking powder, some cornstarch,
Okay.
and a little bit of water, only if needed. So start, you know, giving this a nice little whisk. And if it's a pancake consistency, leave it. If you need a little bit more water to loosen it, then you're gonna add that in. And I would say we probably need a little bit more water. It all depends how much of your marinade is left over. And just patting these dry, okay? Getting as much off as we can. And then a little bit more water.
Yes,
just
chef.
a little bit more.
It's all about the pickle, in my opinion.
A little
what?
bit more.
The pickle.
The
Because
pickle-
the pickle with the fried.
I also think the
And then
bun.
the bun.
Yeah.
And I would argue that this pickle at this establishment, oh, look at that. So the pickle at this
Wow.
establishment is just not even a typical pickle.
No.
It's a little bit thicker and has a little bit more chew to it.
So it's your atypical pickle?
It's the atypical pickle. All right, so I'm just gonna get a nice internal on this.
160?
You see that right
Perfection.
there? 159.
Perfection.
It's good to take it out right now because that carryover temperature and cooking is gonna get it to that
Wow.
160, 165.
man.
Now, I like to kind of keep this on crumpled up paper instead of flat. Yeah, Jeezy.
Yeah.
Hit it with a little bit of salt right as it comes
Right
out.
there.
And then I'm just gonna show you how to dredge and get these in. All right, so chicken breasts, dried off. They're wet. So I'm gonna go into some flour.
This is like lunacy, right?
Yeah.
In a good way.
This
Look
is
at
creating the craggles. You need the
Craggle.
crunchy, you need the craggle crunch, you
This
need all
is
of
as
that.
close as Jeffrey's ever getting to a fast food restaurant.
Right? Into,
No, I saw him at one in the drive-thru last night in Jersey. He was
He
wearing
does
a,
it in secret.
Yeah.
into our batter,
Just like that? You
just
fry
like
it?
that. Back into the flour.
Oh, you're doing
Back
a
in
crusty
the triple.
crust.
Ah,
Triple
double
apple
it
pie.
up.
Flour.
This
These
is-
are the tricks. These are the tricks the restaurants, the fast food places are doing.
But it's nice to see. I mean, if you're gonna have food, make it good food. That's
Exactly.
fast, not just
Right
fast.
into the oil. That's peanut oil. You can also do a vegetable oil if you like, and that'll work. So I'll put one together for you. It's not gonna be too bad. You do want it kind of like right when you got it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
it's
So
nice.
we've got the buns. They are buttered.
That's what I'm
brioche
talking
buns,
about.
All right.
Buttered and toasted.
What's the mayo?
So the mayo is very simple. It's just some mayonnaise and a little bit of that sauce from the chipotle and adobo in that little tiny can. You only need to scoop out like a little bit, like a teaspoon, for half a cup of mayo. You don't want to blow your lid off. So
I love mayonnaise. I mean,
Jeff?
to me, it's like mayonnaise on a fried chicken sandwich.
It's really the only thing. There's certain things I'll eat mayonnaise on. One's like a club sandwich, like crispy bacon and iceberg, and others a fried chicken sandwich. Otherwise, I need to have like flavoring in it.
all right, now I always ask for extra pickles. So
Me
I'm just gonna give you, yes, I'll give you 4,
Yes.
1 per quadrant.
You know, the other good thing about when you are at the fast food and you ask for extra pickles, then they make it fresh.
Yes, they do.
They
That
sure
is
Not
do.
sitting there
that
in
is
the
a
lineup.
no.
That's a
always.
trick. Look at that, right on top.
Look at that.
A little bit more.
I mean, that's for like 2 people, no?
No, that's one person. And
Not possible.
we didn't even drive away. We sat in the parking lot and ate that
Yeah, but that's
sandwich
so much
both
food.
times. Like, we are not taking that baby home.
Jeffrey, have we met?
Now, then,
Yes.
you gotta, just like the place, you gotta get it into a pouch. Then I'm gonna close it
I'm
up and
feeling
give it
this.
to you.
I'm feeling it.
And that kind of
you go.
steams
Love
up the
it.
bun
That
and
steams
everything.
up the bun, keeps
You
everything
give
nice
me
and
give me a
warm.
napkin. I'm gonna need it.
You need
Yeah,
a
give
chicken
her a
bit for this.
napkin.
This is you gotta put your
Yeah, you
hair
need
back. Yeah.
Here, can I help you with this one?
Yeah, you can help me with that one, get that out. And
It's
there you
not
have
out.
it. It's
It's not
my
ready yet,
spicy
right?
chicken sandwich, y'all. Forget waiting.
I mean, look at that
That's
thing
it.
of
You got the
beauty.
thick
Here
end
we
and
go.
the tapered end.
You got the thick and the tapered, crunchy goodness.
Sanu.
Is it close?
It's better.
What?
It's so crunchy and juicy on the inside. It's perfectly cooked. And the pickles, and I'm telling you, that soft buttered toasted bun, it's toasted to perfection.
Guys, today is super controversial. I'm making a dish that some say is for sure Chinese, but others argue it's totally American. I say it doesn't matter because it's freaking delicious. That's right, today is all about orange chicken, and I'm throwing in a side of fried rice. Chicken powder is really the secret of every single Chinese restaurant in America. It's actually this that gives you saltiness and savoriness, not really soy sauce. For ultimate crispy orange chicken, get tempura flour. It's a mix of all-purpose flour and cornstarch. It fries up super crispy, but a little light. I can get a little nerdy, but just know this is the stuff. First things first, let's make our fried rice. The secret to great fried rice is using day-old rice. This is just cooked rice hanging out in the fridge. It's dry. If you are using fresh rice, just make sure it's cool, dry, ready to go in the pan. I'm gonna start with some eggs. Another really great tip that Grandma taught me, fresh eggs make fluffy fried rice, and I'll explain that to you here in a second. 2 eggs, just give it a good whisk so it's nice and even. Starting the pan with some high temperature oil. Now you gotta coordinate really quickly here. It's gonna be eggs and then rice right into the eggs. Don't let your eggs set. While those eggs are still wet, pour your rice right into the eggs. And then literally, you're gonna be coating the rice with egg. What's happening is the eggs are coating the rice and it creates this naturally non-stick surface because egg has protein, but it also has a little bit of fat. And you're using that fat from the eggs versus putting a ton of oil in to the pan. As that is cooking, I can put a little onion. So really great fried rice should not be dark and full of soy sauce. Here's the tip, a touch of sugar, a little bit of chicken powder, and just enough soy sauce to kind of give that soy aroma, but not make it dark and heavy and salty. A lot of the salt from this dish is actually coming from the chicken powder. This is really great Hong Kong style fried rice, meaning eggy, light, fluffy. This is the fried rice that my grandma taught me how to make a bazillion times growing up. And you don't see this style often, but I think it's one of the best ways to cook and eat fried rice. And then I'm gonna add some scallions, and this is the perfect side of fried rice for the orange chicken. Visually, what you're looking for is the egg to be cooked through and the rice to be nice and fluffy. And I'm gonna hold this in the oven, but you can put this in a casserole dish or a bowl and just have it hanging out till you're ready to eat orange chicken. So to get some vegetation into this dish, I wanna cook off some broccoli, and I'm gonna use my buddy Chef Mike, meaning Chef Microwave. Yeah, I know, it's cheesy, but effective. I've got broccoli florets in the bowl, a little bit of water in here. I'm just gonna season this and then cover it with plastic. And I'm gonna ask Chef Mike to cook this on high for 3 minutes and I'm good to go. All right, so let's get to the orange chicken part, and I'm gonna start with the sauce. I mean, everyone's got love for this dish. You go to the mall, you've eaten this about a bazillion times, but I wanted to make my elevated version that actually has orange in it. Now, most people don't actually put any orange juice in their orange chicken, but I do, so let's start with that. So to that, we're gonna add sugar, soy sauce, little paprika, oyster sauce, hoisin sauce, and I'm gonna make a little slurry with my vinegar, a little rice vinegar. So I've added the cornstarch to the vinegar. I need to get it stirred around to activate it. So visually what I'm looking for is the bubbles to start getting smaller and smaller. That means the cornstarch is activating and the sauce is thickening into a nice glaze. So I'm just gonna reserve the sauce and move on to the chicken. So to prep the chicken, I've got chicken thighs and tempura flour. I'm using chicken thighs because it's more moist and I get way more flavor out of it. The nugget won't dry when you fry it. I'm really just going for about 1 to 1.5 inch cubes. So tempura flour is doing double duty. The first thing it's gonna do is dredge the chicken. And all that means is I wanna get enough flour on the chicken so it'll hold on to the batter. Next, I'm gonna add some water to the rest of the tempura flour to make a nice thin batter, like a pancake batter. Perfect, so this is looking to me like beautiful pancake batter. You wanna make sure your oil is at 375 degrees before you start frying, because the magic number is 350. When you put food in frying oil, it brings down the temperature. And what I'm doing is I'm dropping the nuggets into the batter, letting them really pick up a good amount of batter and get it right in. You wanna fry these just a few pieces at a time. You wanna come in with the spider to kind of separate any nuggets that are sticking together. I'm gonna cook these until they're GBD, golden brown delicious, and let them drain on a wire rack. So the chicken is super crispy. It's golden brown delicious. I'm gonna let the chicken rest on the wire rack, drain off a little bit, and set up the final phase, which is the stir fry. I'm starting with a hot pan and put a little oil in it. So like most stir fries, you're gonna go aromatics. Garlic, ginger, and I'm gonna add the chicken to the pan. A little bit of onion, scallions. Because the glaze is sugar-based, it's not gonna penetrate and sog out the chicken. It's just gonna sit on top. It's gonna marry onto all that crispiness. I'm not really worried about the chicken being cooked through because I've already fried it. So I'm really just trying to get a nice even coating here. Once everything's coated, I'm ready to marry the rice and the orange chicken. I can't make this dish because I always get hungry and I want to eat it immediately. So now it's time to plate up. I'm gonna start with the fried rice that we made. Bringing the orange chicken to the game. Oh yeah, that glaze is incredible. And then dot it with our broccoli. Dude, I'm gonna monster this whole plate. I'll see you later. Go, get out of here.
So I'm making one of my favorite comfort food casseroles, chicken spaghetti. And it's my husband's favorite, my kid's favorite, so it's gonna work out well for me. I start chicken spaghetti by boiling a chicken. I just put a whole cut up chicken in a pot, brought it to a boil, then reduced the heat and simmered it for 25 minutes. Now the chicken is really tender, it's falling off the bone, so I'll let that cool for a second. Now for the casserole recipe, I'll need some chicken broth, so I just used the broth that was created by cooking the chicken. This is such a simple dish. And one of the things that makes this casserole so great is that it's easy to eat. And part of the reason for that is I break the spaghetti into pieces. So I just do it right over the pot. And I cook the spaghetti right in the broth that I cooked the chicken in, so it gives the spaghetti great flavor. This is about 1 pound of spaghetti pieces. Okay, now while the spaghetti's cooking, I'll get the chicken ready. It's cool enough to handle, so I'm just gonna hold it over the bowl that I'll mix the casserole in, take off the skin as I go, and then I'm just grabbing the chicken and shredding it with my fingers. The spaghetti's not quite ready, so I'll add the other ingredients to the bowl. I've got a diced onion and diced green and red bell pepper. Now most of this casserole recipe is from scratch, but there's one ingredient I just can't reproduce, and that's canned cream of mushroom soup. I'm sorry guys, but it makes the casserole so good, you just gotta use it. There is no substitute. So that goes on in. And I love this because I just mix it all in one bowl. So I'll just go ahead and add in the salt and pepper. And then I add just a little bit of seasoned salt. It gives it some great flavor, just about 1/2 teaspoon or so. Now this is also optional, but I like to give the chicken spaghetti a little kick, and I add some cayenne pepper, just probably 4 or 5 little sprinkles. Now I'll just give this a stir. And I think the spaghetti should be ready by now. So I'll just make it easy and just pull it right out. Save myself a long trip to the sink to drain this stuff. And see, if I hadn't broken up the spaghetti pieces, I wouldn't be able to do this. I'm always thinking ahead, I tell ya. Not really. Okay. Got the spaghetti in there, so I'll just give it a stir. Start introducing all the ingredients. Then the broth goes in. I'll start with about 1 cup of the broth that I reserved, and then at the very end, I'll check and see what the consistency's like, and I can always splash in more. All right, now I'm gonna grate some cheese. I use sharp cheddar cheese because it's particularly delicious in this casserole when it all melts. And I'll just throw 2 cups right into the bowl with the spaghetti mixture. Okay, now this is where I check the consistency, and it does look like it needs a little more liquid. Because it's baking in the oven, you want it to be a little bit liquidy when it goes in. Then it won't get thick and gloopy. Okay, now I'll just pour it into a casserole dish. Scrape all that yumminess in there. And then I have more cheese left, and it just goes over the top. If this casserole is wrong, I don't want to be right. All right, now this just needs to go into a 350-degree oven for about 35 or 40 minutes. Hey, that was fun. That was awesome, wasn't it?
That was really fun.
You guys hungry for lunch?
Yes. Yeah. Starving.
So who's the hungriest?
Me. Josh.
Ooh, Josh.
Josh is.
You're gonna get a big old helping.
Roast chicken. I can do this in my sleep. So I'm gonna just check the chicken for any leftover pin feathers. And I'm gonna pat it dry on the outside. And I do that so that when I brush it with butter and salt and pepper, it'll stick to it. All the giblets have been taken out and saved for another time. So I'm just gonna stand it up like this and just salt and pepper the inside. And all you need to do is just take this whole lemon, cut it in quarters, and just stuff it in the middle. I'm gonna take this entire head of garlic, cut it right in half. It's gonna be just like a hint of garlic, and it gets into the juices in the vegetables in the pan. It's so delicious. And then I have some fresh thyme, and just stuff it right inside this great chicken. Now all I have to do is brush of butter on the top, salt and pepper, and it's ready to go. You want to melt the butter, but not let it burn. Butter's actually better for this than olive oil. The butter has some milk solids in it that burn a little bit, so it makes the chicken nice and brown. Okay, that's good. So I'm going to brush the entire outside of this chicken, this gorgeous little chicken, and then season it with salt and pepper. I know it seems like a lot of salt, but it's really important for the chicken to have lots of flavor, and that'll do it. And pepper. Okay, this looks gorgeous. Now the next thing I'm going to do is truss it, which is sort of to tie it up so that it cooks evenly. The whole point of trussing is if its little legs are out like this, the legs can very easily get burnt and the meat can get overcooked. So what I want to do is pull it into its body so it cooks really well. And all I have to do is tie the legs together and it'll do that. And you'll see. There are all these very complicated ways to truss a chicken, but this is about as easy as it gets. So I'm going to just take a length of kitchen twine and just tie these little legs together. And I leave long ends so it's easy to take the twine off. Nobody wants to eat twine for dinner. So just like that. And then its little wings just go under here. Just tuck them under. The whole bird doesn't have to be wrapped in twine. I've seen some birds that look like they're in bondage. Roast chicken's just the best kind of comfort food. And the good news is it can be a really simple meal or it can be a really elegant one. Okay, that's ready to go. And now I'm going to make some vegetables. So all the juices from the chicken are going to get into the vegetables and they'll all cook together. And it's going to be so delicious. So into the oven, 425 degrees for about an hour and a half. Can't wait. That roast chicken smells so good. Oh, looks perfectly done. It's been in for about an hour and a half, and there are lots of ways to tell when the chicken is done. Oh, and all those delicious juices coming out into the vegetables. So the first test, I'm just gonna take this little string off so nobody ends up eating it. First test is to shake hands with its leg. If it wobbles like that, it's perfect. The second one is to cut between the leg and the thigh and just make sure the juices are running clear. And if they are, it's definitely done. And it's done. So I'm just going to cover it with aluminum foil. It's really important when you're roasting meats chicken, beef, anything, to let it rest for about 20 minutes after it comes out of the oven. I'm just going to keep it covered so it stays nice and warm. And all the juices run back into the meat, and it makes it so delicious. And then I think I'll put the vegetables back in the oven and let them caramelize a little bit while the chicken rests. My chicken's been resting for about 20 minutes. It's going to be perfect. Time to carve it. So the trick to carving a chicken is I'm going to pull the leg off first. I find that easiest. So I usually take the legs off first, put them on my platter, and depending on how big the legs are, I'll just carve them a little bit, but not too much, into sort of chunks. And then the wing comes off. Ugh, it's just so juicy inside. It's just wonderful. A friend of mine said that Julia Child, how's that for a teacher, showed her how to do this, and it's really brilliant. I've done it ever since. Take the entire breast off in one piece, and then slice it directly across, like this. The whole thing goes on the plate. When you cook a chicken at high temperature, the skin's one of the best parts because it's nice and crisp. And now the vegetables, I'm going to keep this for later for chicken stock. I'm just going to mix it all together, all those juices. Oh, it's just delicious. And all of these carrots and fennel and onions and fresh thyme, I'm just going to put it right on the platter with the chicken. I'm going to take all the juices of the vegetables and the chicken in the bottom and just run them all over the chicken. Really use everything in that pan. Just fabulous. Maybe a little sprinkling of good kosher salt over the top. Who wouldn't want to be home for this dinner? For years and years and years, every time Jeffrey came home on Friday night, I would make roast chicken. And then one day I thought, I've got to be a little more creative than this. I want the house to smell great. And of course, I want to make chicken. So each time I challenge myself to make something new. I'm making chicken piccata, which is wonderful. I'm going to start with 2 chicken breasts. I'm going to do a coating for them. So they're sauteed in a lemon and butter sauce, which is so good. So the first thing I need is half a cup of flour, just all-purpose flour. Half a teaspoon of salt. 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. I'm just going to mix that all together. So that's the first part of the coating. And it's going to be dipped into 1 egg. Just mixed with a little touch of water. Just beat it all together. The next part of the coating is breadcrumbs. I use seasoned breadcrumbs, about 3/4 cup. Okay, I'm just going to heat a little oil in the pan. Just a few tablespoons. And while that gets hot, I'm going to take the chicken breasts and pound them out until they get really thin. Sort of even. Chicken breasts, they're sort of thicker parts and the thinner and other parts. And this way, they cook more evenly and they cook really quickly. Rolling pin's a good basher. Some people have meat pounding things, but everybody has a rolling pin. I like them between 1/4 and 1/2 inch thick. And just do it in 2 directions so it ends up smooth. Doesn't end up in ridges. Okay. So the first one goes into the flour. And just make sure it's coated all over. And shake off the excess into the eggs. The flour dries it out, and then the eggs make it so that the breadcrumbs will adhere. And then the breadcrumbs. Seasoned dry breadcrumbs. And right into the pan. Perfect. Just 2 minutes on each side until it's golden brown. Okay, that guy's done. Perfect. Now the next one. A little oil. right into the pan. 2 minutes on each side. I wonder if this is gonna replace Jeffrey's favorite roast chicken for Friday night chicken dinner. Oh, perfectly done. Okay, I'm gonna put this on a sheet pan. Keep it warm in the oven, 400 degrees for about 10 minutes, right alongside the red onions. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just wipe out the pan that I cooked the chicken in. And I'm just gonna heat up a tablespoon of butter. So the chicken is warm in the oven, just keeping it warm in the oven while I just make a nice sauce for it. Okay, now I need a third of a cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice. It's probably 2 lemons. Just gonna pour it right into the butter. Okay, now half a cup of white wine. Really nice dry white wine. Something I drink for dinner. Okay. Half a teaspoon of salt. 1/4 of a teaspoon of pepper. And this is what I'm gonna do with the lemon shells. I'm gonna put them right in the sauce so you get the flavor of the zest. Just cooks together. So I'm just gonna reduce this by half. It'll take about 2 minutes while I chop up some parsley and some sliced lemons to put on the chicken. Now this looks perfect. Okay, now I'm gonna take the lemon out. It's actually surprising. The oil in the zest really does flavor the sauce. Great. That's gonna be wonderful. Okay, and then the chicken. Some of the piccata sauce. That looks pretty good. Some slices of lemon, so Jeffrey knows it's lemon piccata. A little bit of parsley. These roasted onions smell so good. I love the way they look. Who doesn't love mashed potatoes and buttermilk mashed potatoes? Oh, your timing is perfect as always. Guess what's for dinner?
Well, let's see. It's Friday. Chicken, but what kind of chicken?
It's chicken piccata.
Ooh,
and
that
it's
looks
ready.
great. Let me tell you how good this chicken is.
Is it up there with the roast chicken?
You know, I used to think that roast chicken was the only thing I could have on Friday night. But this chicken piccata, this is just as good.